The avoidant partner is engaging in behaviors that are betrayals, even though they might not look like traditional betrayals. There's no infidelity, no lying about major things, no obvious cruelty. But betrayal isn't just about dramatic violations of trust. Betrayal is any consistent failure to honor the implicit and explicit agreements that partnership requires. And the avoidant is betraying you in ways that are subtle enough that you might be questioning whether you're overreacting, whether your standards are too high, whether you're being too demanding, but you're not. The avoidance patterns constitute genuine betrayals that damage your well-being, undermine the relationship, and violate what you deserve from partnership. These betrayals are particularly insidious because they're covert rather than overt, because they're framed as the avoidance needs rather than as their failures, because they're defended as boundaries rather than named as abandonments. But regardless of how they're framed, these behaviors are betrayals. And they're betrayals you should never tolerate, because tolerating them means accepting that partnership can exist without presence, without vulnerability, without genuine reciprocity, and that acceptance will destroy you while changing nothing about them. Understanding what constitutes betrayal with an avoidant partner requires expanding your definition beyond the obvious. Traditional betrayals, cheating, lying, stealing, are easy to identify and name, but avoidant betrayals are subtle. They're betrayals of emotional presence, betrayals of consistency, betrayals of the basic relational contract that says, if we're together, we're both showing up. The avoidant is physically present sometimes while being emotionally absent most of the time. And this split is betrayal because you entered the relationship expecting a whole partner, not a part-time presence. The avoidant is agreeing to relationship labels while refusing relationship vulnerability. And this contradiction is betrayal because the label without the substance is false advertising. The avoidant is accepting your love while being unable or unwilling to love you back functionally. And this imbalance is betrayal because reciprocity is foundational to partnership, and without it, you're not in relationship, you're in service to someone else's needs while your needs go unmet. The betrayals from avoidant partners are also shocking because they're often the people who claim to value honesty and authenticity above all else. The avoidant presents themselves as direct, as boundaried, as clear about what they want and don't want. But this presentation is itself betrayal, because what they're being direct about is their limitations, while being dishonest about what those limitations mean for you. They'll tell you they need space, they value independence, they can't do emotional intensity. All of this is honest. But what they're not being honest about is that these needs and limitations mean you'll never get the partnership you're hoping for. That their version of relationship is so constrained it barely qualifies as relationship at all. That staying with them means accepting crumbs while telling yourself you're being understanding and mature. The betrayal is letting you stay in relationship under false pretenses, the pretense being that if you're just patient enough, their limitations will expand into real partnership. They won't. And the avoidant knows this, which makes allowing you to hope and stay a profound betrayal. The betrayal of emotional unavailability disguised as boundaries. The avoidant partner's most fundamental betrayal is their emotional unavailability that they frame as healthy boundaries. They tell you they need space, they can't handle emotional intensity, they need time to process before they can talk about feelings. And all of this is presented as self-care, as knowing their limits, as having healthy boundaries. But emotional unavailability is not the same as having boundaries. Boundaries are about protecting yourself while remaining engaged. Unavailability is about protecting yourself by disengaging entirely. The avoidant is using boundary language to defend behavior that's actually abandonment. And the betrayal is making you feel like you're violating their boundaries when you're asking for basic emotional presence that any partnership requires. The betrayal manifests as the avoidant being unreachable when you need them most. You're going through something difficult and they disappear. You're upset about something in the relationship and they shut down completely. You need support, and they tell you they can't handle your emotions right now. Every instance of you needing them emotionally is met with withdrawal, and the withdrawal is defended as them taking care of themselves. But partnership means showing up when your partner needs you. That's not violating boundaries. That's meeting the basic requirement of being in relationship with another human. The avoidance framing of emotional presence as too much, as boundary violation, is betrayal because it makes you wrong for having normal human needs, while making them righteous for refusing to meet those needs. The emotional unavailability betrayal also includes the avoidant sharing nothing about their inner world while expecting full access to yours. You're vulnerable with them, sharing your fears and hopes and struggles. But when you ask about their feelings, you get deflection or surface-level responses that reveal nothing. The relationship is one-directional in terms of emotional intimacy. You're known while they remain unknown. You're vulnerable while they stay defended. And this imbalance is betrayal because intimacy requires mutual vulnerability. You're being intimate with someone who's refusing intimacy in return, which means you're being exposed and known while they remain protected and mysterious. The betrayal is accepting your vulnerability while offering none of their own, taking your emotional labor while contributing none of their own, knowing you while refusing to be known. The framing of unavailability as boundaries is particularly betraying because it makes you the problem. When you express hurt about their emotional absence, they tell you you're not respecting their boundaries. When you say you need more emotional connection, they tell you you're being needy. When you request basic presence, they tell you you're asking for too much. The avoidant is using therapeutic language to pathologize your normal needs while normalizing their dysfunctional limitations. And this reversal, where your health is framed as sickness and their dysfunction is framed as wellness, is gaslighting that constitutes profound betrayal. You're being made to feel crazy for wanting what you should be able to expect from partnership. And that's not boundary setting, that's abuse disguised as self-care. The betrayal of inconsistency that creates anxious attachment. The avoidant partner's hot and cold behavior is betrayal of your nervous system. They're warm and present one day, cold and distant the next. They're affectionate on Tuesday, withdrawn by Thursday. They initiate closeness and then punish you for responding to that closeness by creating distance. The inconsistency is not just annoying or frustrating, it's actively traumatizing because it creates anxious attachment even in previously secure people. Your nervous system learns it can't predict safety with this person. You're hypervigilant, always monitoring their mood, trying to figure out what version of them you're getting today. The betrayal is creating conditions where you can't relax, can't trust, can't feel secure, and then blaming you for the anxiety their inconsistency creates. The inconsistency betrayal includes the avoidant pursuing you when you pull back and withdrawing when you move closer. They want you most when you're least available and want you least when you're most available. This push-pull dynamic is deliberate emotional manipulation even if it's unconscious. The avoidant is managing their own anxiety about intimacy by controlling distance. And they control distance through making you the one who's always adjusting, always accommodating, always confused about where you stand. The betrayal is using you to regulate their discomfort with closeness, making you the person who has to manage both your needs and their fears, keeping you off balance so they can maintain the illusion of control. The betrayal of inconsistency also manifests as words not matching actions. The avoidant says they care about you while their behavior demonstrates indifference. They say they want the relationship while they do nothing to maintain it. They express feelings when they want something from you and withdraw those feelings the moment you need something from them. The gap between what they say and what they do creates cognitive dissonance that makes you question your perception of reality. You heard them say they love you, so why are they acting like you don't matter? You know they said they wanted to be together, so why are they creating constant distance? The betrayal is saying things that create hope and commitment from you while behaving in ways that honor neither the words nor your resulting investment. The inconsistency as betrayal is particularly damaging because it trains you to accept crumbs. When someone is consistently unavailable, you can make clear decision about whether that's acceptable. But when someone is intermittently available, when they give you glimpses of what the relationship could be followed by withdrawal of that possibility, you stay hoping that the good version will become the consistent version. The intermittent reinforcement is the strongest form of behavioral conditioning. The avoidant is keeping you hooked through unpredictable rewards, and keeping you hooked while being unwilling to show up consistently is using you, which is betrayal. They're getting the benefits of your continued investment without having to invest themselves consistently. And that's not partnership. That's exploitation of your hope and your attachment to maintain supply for themselves while offering nothing reliable in return. The betrayal of letting you do all the emotional labor. The avoidant partner betrays you by accepting all the emotional labor you do while contributing none themselves. You're the one initiating difficult conversations. You're the one noticing when something is wrong. You're the one working to understand their patterns so you can navigate them better. You're the one reading about attachment theory. You're the one suggesting couples therapy. You're the one doing the work of keeping the relationship alive while they just exist in it, contributing nothing to its maintenance or growth. And this imbalance is betrayal because partnership requires shared labor. When one person does all the work of understanding, compromising, and maintaining, the other person is not a partner. They're a dependent being carried through relationship without reciprocating the effort. The betrayal of unreciprocated emotional labor includes you managing their emotions for them. You're monitoring their moods. You're adjusting your behavior to prevent their withdrawal. You're suppressing your needs so you don't trigger their defenses. You're walking on eggshells to maintain whatever fragile connection exists. You're regulating yourself and them simultaneously, which is exhausting and unsustainable. The avoidant should be managing their own emotional responses, but instead they're outsourcing that management to you through making you responsible for preventing their negative reactions. And this outsourcing is betrayal because adults are supposed to manage their own emotions, not make their partners responsible for managing emotions for them. The emotional labor betrayal also manifests as the avoidant never initiating repair after conflict. When there's disconnection, you're the one who reaches out. When there's misunderstanding, you're the one who seeks to clarify. When there's hurt, you're the one who tries to resolve it. The avoidant can stay in disconnection indefinitely, comfortable with the distance, waiting for you to do the work of repair because they always know you will. And this pattern is betrayal because repair should be shared responsibility. Both people should be invested enough in the relationship to do the uncomfortable work of reconnecting after disconnection. But the avoidant is comfortable with you always being the one to bridge gaps they created, which means they have no incentive to change their behavior because they know you'll always do the work of fixing what they break. The betrayal of emotional labor imbalance is profound because it means you're in relationship with someone who's benefiting from relationship without contributing to it. The avoidant is receiving your understanding, your patience, your effort to make things work. But they're not reciprocating any of it. They're not trying to understand you. They're not being patient with your needs. They're not putting in effort to make anything work. The relationship is sustained entirely by your labor, and sustained relationship through one person's labor is not relationship. It's codependency, where you're giving everything and they're giving nothing, and both of you are pretending this imbalance is acceptable because you're calling it understanding their limitations rather than naming it as them exploiting your generosity. The betrayal of keeping you in ambiguity. The avoidant partner betrays you through refusing to define the relationship clearly. You don't know where you stand. You're not sure what you are to them. Labels are avoided. Future planning is shut down. Commitment is always just out of reach, always something they might be ready for later, but never now. And this ambiguity is betrayal because clarity is basic respect. Keeping you in uncertainty serves the avoidant by giving them all the benefits of having you without any of the responsibilities that definition would create. They get to have you while maintaining the illusion that they're not really committed, not really attached, not really in relationship that would require them to show up fully. The ambiguity betrayal manifests as the avoidant refusing to introduce you to important people in their life or integrate you into their world. Months or years pass and you still haven't met their family, their close friends, their colleagues. You exist in compartmentalized space, separate from the rest of their life, which communicates that you're not important enough to integrate, not significant enough to claim publicly, not valuable enough to fully include. And this compartmentalization is betrayal because integration is how people show that relationship matters. Keeping you separate signals you're optional, you're secret, you're not real in the way relationships are real when they're woven into the fabric of someone's life. The betrayal of ambiguity also includes the avoidant maintaining options, keeping themselves available to others while expecting you to be monogamous with them, or at least primary in your focus. They're still on dating apps. They're maintaining flirtatious connections. They're making clear through word or action that they're not fully choosing you, because choosing you would mean releasing other possibilities, and they're not ready for that. But they expect you to have chosen them, to be waiting for them, to be available while they keep shopping around, or at least keep the door open to shopping around. This double standard is betrayal because it's asking you to be all in while they stay half out, which is not fair and not partnership. The ambiguity as betrayal is particularly damaging because it prevents you from making informed decisions about your life. If you knew the avoidant would never commit, never integrate you, never choose you fully, you could decide whether that's acceptable and leave if it's not. But the ambiguity creates hope that things might change, that eventually they'll be ready, that you just need to be patient a little longer. The betrayal is allowing you to hope when they already know they're not going to give you what you're hoping for. They're letting you wait when waiting is futile. They're keeping you in uncertainty that serves them while harming you. And that harm through ambiguity is intentional even if unconscious, is betrayal even if it's not labeled as such. The betrayal of making you accept less than you need. The avoidant partner's fundamental betrayal is conditioning you to accept treatment that doesn't meet your needs, while making you feel like accepting this treatment is growth, is understanding, is maturity. They need space, so you learn to need less contact. They can't do emotional intensity, so you learn to suppress your emotions. They can't commit, so you learn to accept ambiguity. Every need you have is gradually trained out of you through the avoidant's consistent failure to meet those needs combined with framing your needs as too much. And this conditioning is betrayal because partnership should honor your needs, not eliminate them. You shouldn't have to become smaller, quieter, less needy to be acceptable to your partner. You should be able to be your full self with your actual needs and have those needs met, or at least be told honestly that your partner can't meet them, so you can decide if staying makes sense. The betrayal of making you accept less includes the avoidant normalizing their limitations, as if all relationships involve this much suppression of needs. They tell you that needing consistent communication is unrealistic. They say that wanting emotional support is codependent. They frame your desire for integration and commitment as pressure. And all of this framing makes you question whether your needs are legitimate, whether you're asking for too much, whether you need to lower your standards. But you don't. Your needs are normal. Wanting consistency, emotional availability, commitment, integration. These are basic relationship needs. The betrayal is making you feel abnormal for wanting what's actually fundamental to functional partnership. The betrayal also manifests as the avoidant making you believe you're in partnership when you're actually in one-sided arrangement where only their needs matter. They need space, you give it. They need reassurance, you provide it. They need you to be low maintenance, you suppress yourself. But when you need something, connection, reassurance, presence, they're unavailable. The relationship is organized entirely around their capacity and their comfort. Your needs are irrelevant, except to the extent they're easy for them to meet. And this arrangement is betrayal because calling it partnership is lie. Partnership involves mutual care, mutual adjustment, mutual meeting of needs. What you have is you adjusting to them completely while they adjust to you not at all. The betrayal of conditioning you to accept less is particularly insidious because it makes you complicit in your own diminishment. You start believing their framing. You start thinking you are too needy, too emotional, too demanding. You internalize their narrative about your needs being problems rather than recognizing their inability to meet normal needs as the actual problem. The avoidant is not just failing to meet your needs. They're convincing you that your needs are wrong, that wanting more from partnership is asking for too much, that accepting their limitations is what healthy relationship looks like. And this gaslighting about what constitutes healthy relationship is betrayal that damages not just the current relationship, but your ability to recognize and require health in future relationships. The betrayal of never doing the work to change. The avoidant partner's ultimate betrayal is being aware of their patterns, seeing how those patterns hurt you, understanding that they need therapy or deep personal work, and choosing not to do that work while expecting you to stay anyway. The avoidant knows they're emotionally unavailable. They know their inconsistency creates anxiety in you. They know their inability to commit is unfair. They know all of this because you've told them, because you've explained how their behavior affects you, because you've asked them to work on these things. But knowing doesn't translate into action. The avoidant continues the same patterns while asking you to continue accepting those patterns. And this combination, awareness without change, plus expectation that you stay, is the most profound betrayal because it means they're choosing their comfort over your well-being consciously, deliberately, with full knowledge of what that choice cost you. The betrayal of not doing the work manifests as broken promises about change. They say they'll work on being more available, being more consistent, being more vulnerable. They acknowledge they need therapy, and they say they'll look into it. They agree their patterns are problematic, and they express intention to change. But intention without action is just manipulation through hope creation. You stay because they said they'd work on it. You give them more time because they acknowledge the problems. But months pass and nothing changes except their excuses for why they haven't started therapy yet, why they can't seem to be more consistent, why vulnerability still feels impossible. The betrayal is using promises as placeholders for action, keeping you invested through words that are never backed by behavioral change. The not doing the work betrayal also includes the avoidant expecting you to be satisfied with tiny improvements that don't actually address core issues. They text slightly more often and expect you to celebrate this as progress. They have one vulnerable conversation and expect you to see it as evidence they're changing. They're making minimal effort and expecting maximum credit, while you're supposed to ignore that the core patterns, emotional unavailability, inconsistency, refusal to commit, remain completely unchanged. The betrayal is repackaging continuation of dysfunction as growth, is relabeling slight modifications as transformation, is expecting you to be so starved for any improvement that you'll accept 5% better as if it's the 100% better you actually need. The betrayal of never doing the work is ultimate because it reveals that the avoidant values their defended state more than they value you. If they valued you more than their defenses, they'd do the work to dismantle those defenses. If the relationship mattered more than their comfort, they'd tolerate the discomfort of therapy and growth. But they don't. They choose themselves over you every time, which would be acceptable if they were honest about it, if they said, "I'm not willing to do the work, so you should find someone who is." But they're not honest about it. They keep you hoping while having no intention of becoming what you need them to become. And that hope maintenance through inaction is betrayal that wastes years of your life waiting for change that's never coming from someone who never intended to change, despite knowing change is what the relationship requires. Why you should never tolerate these betrayals. These betrayals from avoidant partners should never be tolerated because tolerating them means accepting that you don't deserve basic partnership functions. Emotional availability isn't too much to ask. Consistency isn't unrealistic to expect. Someone doing their work to be functional in relationship isn't demanding. These are baseline requirements for healthy partnership, and accepting less means accepting that you're not worth health, that your needs don't matter enough to meet, that partnership can exist without presence or growth or reciprocity. And once you accept these things, once you normalize dysfunction as if it's just how relationships work, you damage your ability to recognize and require health anywhere in your life. The betrayals change you, teach you to expect less, train you to accept treatment you should never accept. And that training is the most lasting damage the avoidant does, convincing you that breadcrumbs are enough, that limitations are boundaries, that their dysfunction is your problem to manage rather than their responsibility to heal. You should never tolerate these betrayals because tolerating them doesn't help the avoidant. You might think your patience will inspire them to change, your acceptance will make them feel safe enough to be vulnerable, your staying will prove they're worth loving and motivate their growth. But it doesn't work that way. Tolerating their betrayals enables them. It removes consequences for behavior that should have consequences. It allows them to continue patterns that limit their life while someone else absorbs the damage those patterns create. Your tolerance is not loving, it's codependent. And codependence doesn't help people grow. It helps them stay stuck while feeling comfortable in their stuckness because someone is making their stuck state sustainable. You should never tolerate these betrayals because life is too short to spend it with someone who's betraying you daily through absence disguised as presence, through limitations disguised as boundaries, through awareness disguised as change. You deserve partnership with someone who shows up emotionally, who's consistent, who does their work, who's clear about commitment, who meets you with equivalent effort and care. That person exists. That relationship is possible, but you'll never find it while you're tolerating betrayals from someone who's incapable of providing it. The avoidance betrayals are not your cross to bear. They're not obstacles to overcome through more understanding or more patience. They're information that this person can't be your person, that this relationship can't be your relationship, that staying is choosing known harm over unknown possibility. And that choice, the choice to stay with someone who's betraying you daily in ways both subtle and profound, is the only betrayal you should never tolerate. Your betrayal of yourself by remaining with someone who's shown you through consistent action they're not capable of loving you the way you deserve to be loved,